How many adventures has Daredevil actually been on in the years since the conclusion of Season 3, and his resurgence in Born Again? And what do we know about this gap in time? Daredevil is one of the most prominent street-level characters that Marvel has, and his return has been met with widespread acclaim. We know that he took a year off after the death of Foggy Nelson, and is preparing to don the horns yet again. But in the trailer, we see a rack of 5 distinct helmets that Matt seems to have in his possession, and each of them corresponds with a different comic arc that has widespread ramifications on the Daredevil character. So today, let's try to fill in some of the gaps and figure out exactly what Matt has been up to. Let's go straight down the line, starting with the silver one all the way at the end. This hints at the purified Daredevil storyline. In this arc, Matt found himself weighed down by the immense self-guilt, which is not too far from what we're seeing here. In the comic though, it was the result of literal demons gnawing at his conscience. He found himself unable to continue his life as Daredevil, so he set down the mask and became a priest. But he couldn't stay away from the life for that long. Oftentimes, the term demons is used to refer to the weight of one's actions, or decisions that haunt someone for reasons one or another. And in the Daredevil series, both are true. So when he went to Doctor Strange and asked to be exorcised, and after some mystic intervention, Matt had these literal demons cast out, purifying the man without fear, and giving way to an enlightened Daredevil. This version of Daredevil actually underwent a crusade to track down and defeat the 7 deadly sins, who were plaguing Hell's Kitchen and attacking Matt's loved ones. Sloth possessed Elektra, while Envy went after Ben-Urich, and Daredevil himself was forced to contend with a wrathful Wolverine. Daredevil is not usually a mystic entity, and most of his adventures are around street-level crimes, but these demons were the personification of Matt's own sin, and remain one of the more interesting mystic adventures for the man without fear. In the MCU, we find it unlikely that Matt has any adventures that deal directly with the supernatural, and we find it even less likely that he has crossed paths with Doctor Strange, but this could still allude to the idea that Matt took up the title of a priest at some point in the past. We do know that his guilt is the core trait of the character, so the white mask may be a reflection of a more symbolic journey to purge himself of the weight of his actions. We don't believe that he retired, since that's a massive factor in the Born Again show, but it would be interesting to see how he purified himself in the MCU, and if he went a spiritual crusade to conquer his own 7 deadly sins. The next helmet seems fairly straightforward, since as far as we can tell, this is the helmet that he wore throughout his days with the Defenders. Assuming that the entirety of the Daredevil Netflix show is canon, which we have no reason not to believe, then his first official Daredevil helmet was damaged in Season 2 when Frank Castle shot Matt in the head, cracking the helmet and injuring Matt in the process. We know that it was temporarily mended, but eventually it would be officially replaced, making this helmet the one from the latter half of Season 2 and the events of the Defenders. This is the one he wore while fighting the Hand, and when he joined up with the likes of Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. And even though the Defenders series wasn't nearly as critically acclaimed as Daredevil's, it has been rumored that members of the Defenders are going to reappear in Season 2 of Born Again. This means that there's likely a chance that the events of the Defenders are still canon if we are basing it on how respectful Born Again has been to the original series. But let's now move on to Daredevil's next suit, the red and gold suit that he wore from She-Hulk. We don't know exactly how long before Foggy's death the events of She-Hulk took place, but it's interesting to consider whether or not these masks are placed in chronological order or not. Because if they are, then it means that they would have retired the yellow suit and adopted 2 more in less than a year. Matt has been busy. The yellow suit is based on Matt's first ever appearance, which was inspired by the boxing robes of Battlin' Jack Murdock. In the original comic run, the suit was actually made from Jack Murdock's boxing robes directly, though in the show and later adaptations, this shifted to just becoming his inspiration. It could be Matt honoring his father in some way of this span of time, whether it's an anniversary or a memorial, especially considered that he wasn't in Hell's Kitchen when he wore the suit in the MCU. Instead, he was in California, and he commissioned Luke Jacobs to either create or repair a new yellow helmet for him. We know that Marvin usually handles Matt's supersuit issues when he's in New York, but Matt says that Luke Jacobs needs legal aid, so Matt flew out to California and got a new suit while he was out there. But this doesn't seem like a very long-term commitment. By the time we see him again in Echo, he's back to his default red, so we don't think that he had the red and gold for very long, though he still holds onto the helmet as evidence in the trailer. The black helmet, however, may be one of the 2 possible suits that Matt has worn, so we'll cover both of them and let you decide which is better. Option 1 is that this is an adaptation of the Armored Avenger suit. This saw Matt use a predominantly black suit with gnarly metal shoulder pads and a much more armor-plated look. In season 1 of the Netflix show, he outright refuses to wear body armor, with his justification being that it would slow him down too much despite being severely injured. Matt relies on his acrobatics, and wearing a bulky plated suit would limit his capabilities. And when he wears the armor in the comics, he is able to join the Avengers, and can stand up to heavy hitters like Venom, who would usually easily outclass him. He kept his billy clubs at his wrists and was much more durable. But the second option is this could be an adaptation of the Shadowland suit, which is when Daredevil slipped and became an outright villain. By this point, he had been mentally and emotionally broken from his past life as a vigilante, but the organization known as the Hand had grown to admire his skill. For years, he had been at odds with them, and he had generally been able to stand up to them at every single impasse. But eventually, the Hand offered him a leadership role in their organization, and he took it. They acknowledged that he had become the best of them, and they were willing to follow his command. However, they did have a contingency plan. If he denied them, they would go directly to Wilson Fisk, and Matt decided on having one hand on the leash was better than letting the Kingpin run amok, now having a brand new army of assassins under his control. Reluctantly, Matt accepted, but he slowly began to slip into villainy. His dark Shadowland suit is a sleeker adaptation of the armored Avenger look that allows him to remain acrobatic while operating with the Hand under his control. This brings up an interesting through line that indicates that these helmets may not actually be in chronological order though. We began this video by talking about the silver purified helmet that was meant to symbolize Matt's redemption, as in that story he defeated his inner demons and redeemed himself. Then it's therefore possible that in the MCU, that these two helmets in particular go hand in hand. We don't believe that he ever joined the Hand, especially not after season 2, but we also don't believe that he fought literal demons like the purified suit would indicate. But we do believe that Matt has had a dark phase in a fairly recent past. We believe it's likely that Matt found himself going down a dark path, taking on even more ruthless approach to his life as a crime fighter, thus resulting in a darker suit inspired by the Shadowland arc. It's important to mention that even in his darkest streak, he still never has killed anyone, but the first time he ever attempted to kill someone was when Bullseye killed Foggy. Whatever happened in this period of time that we do not see could lead to a road of redemption. He may have needed to rediscover his faith in humanity, and once he believed that people were inherently good, he changed his suit to the white and the silver. This may have been Matt's attempt to inspire change. This would also explain his good mood in the She-Hulk series, as he has a more lighthearted take on all of his crime-fighting ventures. Daredevil has stories where he is more lighthearted, but this particular version usually takes himself very seriously. But he has recently found himself redeemed with a new lease on life and a new view on humanity, then the events of a purified arc could have their own way in his adventures with Jen Walters. He may have pivoted from the silver suit to the red and gold to remember his father, and then he went back to Hell's Kitchen. He eventually found a middle ground that led him back to his red suit from Echo in the beginning of Born Again. This new suit seems like an updated version of the red suit from season 2, and Matt's demeanor in Echo seems to indicate that he's been taking himself very seriously again. But it's only when Foggy dies that he decides to formally retire, since he crossed a line and attempted to kill Bullseye. But the one thing that all of these suits have in common is the fact that they showcase the iconic Double D logo, something that Marvel has yet to give us in live action. So far, all of Matt's live-action suits have been blank, and Daredevil fans are still holding out hope that the Double Ds will be shown very soon. But anyway guys, what do you think of Matt Murdock's new collection of suits? And what do you think this timeline works in relation to the comics? And are all of these suits inspired by different comic arcs from Matt? Does this answer the various storylines suggested by the helmets? And which of them would you like to see Matt take up next? Would you like him to stick to the red for the foreseeable future? Or should he readopt one of the different uniforms? As always guys, smash that subscribe button for more lore, and have a great day.